Hi class, welcome to week 6 of History 1301. This week you guys are going to be reading a lot of chapters about slavery in the South and issues concerning that. So I wanted to bring you guys into DC to talk a little bit about slavery in the nation's capital. So DC, of course, is the capital of the nation. It was the capital of the Union during the Civil War, and of course it is home to the three branches of our government: the executive branch, legislative branch, and the judicial branch. So not only is it the place where laws are created, but it is a place where people often come to exercise their First Amendment rights through protests and other things. You can see behind me here, there are signs that are up in support of Black Lives Matter. We'll walk by later and I'll let you guys see some of this. It's also DC. It's of course home to large-scale protests. You have in the 1960s you had Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech and the March for Civil Rights. On the other side of the White House back here, on the National Mall, the largest march in history, the Women's March in 2017 was here in DC. So it is a lot of people exercising their rights. So that's why I wanted to be here. And I apologize, there's a lot going on around me. There are a lot of people, so I may be a little bit distracted. It may be a little bit loud, but I'll try and be as concise and focused as possible. So this week you guys are going to read a lot about slavery. You'll learn a lot about slavery in the Deep South. So you'll talk about cotton plantations, slaves there. The South, of course, you'll focus on the Deep South. We'll talk about slavery in the South, like Virginia and Maryland, and of course DC is right on the border of Maryland is to the north and Virginia is just to the south. So in Virginia and Maryland, a lot of the plantation growth was focused on tobacco, and then in the South it was cotton. So slavery was very prominent here as well, and it did touch pretty much every aspect of society here in DC, in the capital. Let's see, behind me here is Lafayette Square. It's of course blocked off right now, we can't get to it, but I'll move over here and see if you guys can see behind me through these trees. You've got the White House there. Normally you can go in here, but right now it is blocked off surrounding the White House, so we can't go. This is as close as I can get to you guys. And then behind me here is St. John's Episcopal Church, and I'll take you guys over there as well. So we'll start off talking about slavery in the White House for you guys, and I'll have this behind me and walk over just a little bit. So the White House was built partially by slaves. Slaves worked with the labor and built the White House. Michelle Obama, the first African-American First Lady, is quoted as saying, "I woke up every day in a house built by slaves." The 8 of the first 12 presidents that lived in the White House brought slaves with them when they were there. They worked in the yard, they worked in the house, keeping house. So slavery did exist inside the White House, and that's something that's very important to think about, how racial issues and slavery, it was just ingrained in society, so much so that it existed in our nation's capital, in the White House. So just across from the White House, over here you have St. John's Episcopal Church. That's that yellow building behind me. You can see the steeple up there. And we'll walk by so you guys can see that a little bit better. So St. John's Episcopal Church was once bordered by slave pens. So if you guys look up and down the street here, all the way down here, slave pens did border this area back in time. And then St. John John's Episcopal Church over here was a place where slaves would often get married or be baptized. So it had an active role in slavery here in the city too. DC was a major hub for the slave trade. A lot of slave trade happened here. I'm going to walk by here. You can see the signs, and I will be quiet because we've got a lot of it's a little bit loud, so I stopped. So as I was saying, DC was a major player in the slave trade, and there are parts all over the city that were actively part of the slave trade. Here in Lafayette Square, again behind me, this is a quieter area, slaves were bought and sold here in Lafayette Square. As the tobacco industry in Maryland and Virginia started to decline, slaves were brought here into DC, and they were kept in pens here along this street and in other areas for weeks or for months until they could be sold to cotton plantations and moved down to the deep south. Let's see, where the cotton industry, of course, was booming. I'm gonna walk up here. It's a little quieter. Hopefully I won't be quite as distracted. And we're gonna go to an area called Decatur House, and it is right off to the side of Lafayette Square. So the White House is just back here. St. John's Church is back at that intersection. We're gonna walk over to the end here to Decatur House, where it will be quieter, and then we'll talk there, and that'll be the video for this week. I know it's pretty chaotic back there, but again, people exercising their rights to protest in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And things are very tense and very heated here in DC right now with the issues that are going on in our society. So, all right, so we'll come here, and behind me here, this red house, again, I can't get in because of the gates that are up around Lafayette Square, but that is Decatur House. It's a historical landmark there. We'll move over a little bit closer to it. So Decatur House I wanted to bring you guys to because it is the only landmark here in the city, and one of the few urban landmarks in the country that still have slave quarters in the back, and you can see. So here's Decatur House here, and then this, gotta get my pointer right there is the area that's the slave quarters. So you've got the presence of them ingrained in the city. Hi, puppy. Other areas in the city that show how ingrained slavery was. There's the Washington Jail at the corner of 4th and G Street Northwest, which was a jail for runaway slaves. And it didn't take very much at all to be classified as a runaway. If you were black and you were out in the city after sundown, you would often get arrested and get put in the jail, whether you were a runaway slave, a free man, or a slave that was not running away, and you were there until your owner or someone came and paid the bail and got you out. Let's see. Speaking of the jail, we'll talk quickly about Solomon Northup. He is the author of the memoir 12 Years a Slave. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or heard about it. It came out a few years ago. But he was a free black man from New York, came down to DC and was arrested and put in jail and sold into slavery. So basically he was kidnapped by slave traders, 1841, held in a DC slave pen, beaten with a whip, and sold into slavery and moved down south to deep south, the cotton plantations. Slavery didn't end in DC before the Civil War started. It ended in 1862, and then the era of Jim Crow came into the area, so segregation was still very much a thing. in the National Theater on Pennsylvania Avenue. African Americans could sit in the upper gallery when it was first built and opened, but then that was taken away from them, and they were no longer allowed in the National Theater until 1952, and only then that was on an integrated basis. Restaurants desegregated in 1953, and schools here desegregated in 1954. So segregation and racism here was very ingrained in the city, just because it was the nation's capital and the capital of the Union in the Civil War, which fought to end slavery, does not mean that it wasn't still part of society and it's part of the culture here. So we'll end this by saying that while slavery is often talked about in both history classes and in society, and that it's nothing that we should ever forget, it's easy to only think about slavery as being in the South and being on plantations or being out in fields, and it's easy to not think about it impacting life in cities or life farther up north. But it touched almost every part of society in the U.S., even in the nation's capital, and the impact of slavery and the racial injustice and the inequality that followed is still something that our nation struggles with today. So that's it. I hope you guys were able to hear me, and I hope you guys were able to understand and see. I know it was a little bit crowded, a little bit crazy. Again, this is week 6. After this week, you guys only have 2 weeks left in the course, so keep up the hard work. Make sure to email me or message me if you guys need anything at all, and check the announcements for assignments due this week. I think you've got your quiz and your discussion, and be working on catching up if you're a little bit behind, or working ahead if you know that you're going to be busy. But please let me know if you need anything, and have a great week. Bye.